same pattern. Tiki Barber and Brian Dawkins leveled.
That ball went out of here off the top of the wall. Chipper Jones just won the ball game.
We got 30 minutes for the rest of our lives. 30 minutes.
Electrifies the crowd and is the beginning of a new order here in the NBA.
All right, time for our Hometown Heroes podcast. Dan Hicken, Denny Thompson, our Hometown Heroes podcast presented by Lockett Law, knowbeforeyouBlow.com. And we got a special guest today. He's a longtime Jacksonville great who now makes his way up there in whiskey in Wisconsin. He is LeRoy Butler via Lee High School and FSU. How you doing, LeRoy?
Doing good, Dan and Denny. Glad you have for you guys to have me on. I appreciate it.
Now, listen, everybody always asks me this question, and in fact, we got asked it 3 times today, so I will ask you this question. Okay. I think I know the answer, but your first name, LeRoy or Leroy? Many people, the way I remember it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's LeRoy, but you finally just gave up correcting people and said, whatever.
Exactly. I mean, because again, you know, my mom, and what you know my mom, and she was amazing. And she never really cared until she heard people doing games in the NFL.
Right.
So she never told Coach Bobby Bowden, oh, no, his name is LeRoy. She just never, it really didn't matter to me either. But Edgar Bennett said something that was really funny. You know, Edgar's like my brother. He goes, no, his name was Leroy. He gets drafted. Did he change his name to Leroy? And it was just so funny.
It's like the Mike Stanton to Juan Carlo.
Tony Dorsett.
Exactly.
Yeah, Theismann and Thiesman.
Thiesman for the Heisman.
Yeah, we see how it works.
Tomato, who cares?
Hey, can we start? You want to start at the high school level?
Sure.
With Lee High School and the legendary coach Corky Rogers. I was doing a little digging. I guess I didn't realize this, LeRoy, is top 33 players in the history of high school football. He's on that list in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
That is insane when you think about all the guys that have played football. We're not talking about Montana or Arkansas. We're talking about Florida. We're talking about Florida, the top 33 players to ever play in high school. Does that mean anything to you still? And being an elite athlete like you are, can you fully appreciate that?
You know, Denny, to me, it's one of the accomplishments that I am proud of. I mean, because I think you just touched on all the great players in the state of Florida. And at that time, you know, you hear all these accolades and you hear all these, you know, Hall of Fame, you know, Packer Hall of Fame stuff and, you know, Florida State, you know, Hall of Fame stuff. But that, to me, sets you apart from so many great players. And I think it's a tribute to my teachers. My teachers at, you know, Lee High School were amazing. They were amazing because for African American in the inner city and going through poverty, and Dan, you know my story. That's the kind of stuff that, like Miss Gordon, my algebra teacher, you know, they're proud of because it really says about what the school was all about. Because most of the people on that list go to some of these powerhouse schools. Well, guess what? You know, Lee High School had a powerhouse as long as Coach Corky Rogers was there, and Coach Barrett and Coach Warner and Coach Belger. I mean, that represents them as well as me. So I'm just so fortunate to be on that particular team.
Well, that's very humble of you. But I will say, of all the things that I read preparing for this, that was the one that was like mind blowing to me, just because the sheer volume of players.
Right.
Since that time, and again, the fact that we are in the state of Florida, it's like I had a hard time even wrapping my head around. Like, how do you even come up with the top 33 with all the great players? And then
I know, right?
And then the top 33 to be in that is that's insane to me.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I thought about when I saw that particular list, and I was like, wow, because I really didn't have a position at one point. I was like a utility guy on offense, and then, I was a linebacker, then I was a safety. And I remember, and Denny, this was impactful. I remember sitting in my history class, which I didn't like very much. And I remember our principal, Dr. Stasko, I remember him stopping me in the hallway. And he said to me something I'll never forget. He said that you're a consensus All-American. We've never had an All-American in the school before. And he just looked at me because he had glasses, and he pulled them down to the end of his nose. He said, that's big. Yeah. We've never had and so when you're going through a powerhouse like Lee High School, and you're playing all these great schools like Ribault and Raines high schools, and you talk about all the great players, to be even mentioned amongst them, to me, is just pretty amazing.
Now, help me remember correctly, but LeRoy, you were on the team that played the classic game with Emmett, right?
Yes.
And you guys, the story goes, the history goes, and I think you can look this up. I believe this is true, but Corky and LeRoy and that Lee team was the only team, the last team to hold Emmitt Smith under 100 yards rushing in high school. And because Emmett, I think, was a sophomore. I think it was a state playoff game, double overtime, and you guys ended up, I think, coming up short in that one. Is that correct?
Yes, and me and Emmett would still argue about that when we got to the pros. I went to, of course, Green Bay. He went to Dallas.
Yeah.
Because he said the statistician, he lost yardage on a play. And then he made those yards back up, and they didn't count the yards. So spin it how you want, okay? Just live with that.
It's in the record books.
Because no one ever held him under 100, so he did it. And Coach Barrett he was our defensive coordinator. He was very, very proud of that.
He should be. It was 20, I think officially, and I looked it up, it was 24 for 97. So
Emmett does have an argument. Yeah, it was that close.
He said he was close, yeah. But listen, if you hold Emmett under 100 and Emmett before King Henry came along, Emmett held all the records, and it would run for 300 and 400 yards. He was incredible.
Yeah, it's funny you bringing up Derrick Henry.
Amazing.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask LeRoy in today's game, and kind of jumping ahead while we're on the topic of running backs.
Yes,
who's the running backs in the NFL right now that you would least like to meet up in the hole with? Is it Derrick Henry?
Oh, well, of course it's him.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you think about the guys, the smaller guys like the Aaron Jones, bias, of course, and you think about the guys who can do multiple things, catching the ball out of the backfield, your fantasy football type guys, those guys are difficult to defend because every now and then they'll motion out to a receiver, and if you can't cover them, they'll do a lot of damage. So to me, I look at that and I'm thinking, back in the 90s, we had Barry Sanders, of course, and Emmitt Smith, but they weren't catching a lot of passes. Nowadays, if you can't catch a lot of passes and do everything, even protect the quarterback, they won't even play you. So if you get a stud like a Derrick Henry and you just know you're going to give him, 25 carries, that opens up the play action game. And that's when it gets difficult. So playing a guy like that, and not to mention, if you don't tackle him, you can't be a hitter. You got to be a tackler. That means you just grab Klopp and he'll drag you 3 yards, but at least you'll get him down. Because when you see what he did against Jacksonville running 99 yards.
Thanks for reminding us.
I don't want to be I'm just saying, I don't want to be on SportsCenter chasing a guy that size.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. This is the Hometown Heroes podcast presented by Lockett Law, KnowBeforeYouBlow.com. LeRoy Butler is our special guest. You have to talk a little bit about what your mom meant to you growing up and how you ultimately ended up at Florida State, because if you don't know the story, LeRoy went through a whole lot before he was finally able to get on the football field at FSU, and Coach Bowden recruiting you and coming to see you. Talk a little bit about that story, LeRoy.
My mom she was amazing. And for me, my brothers, Michael, Darian, Doug, and my sister Vicky. For us, we grew up in the projects, poverty-stricken, didn't have a lot growing up. And for me, I was a disabled kid. I had club feet. I had braces on my legs. At times spend time in a wheelchair. So if you're an African-American, you're already poor, you're already at a disadvantage.
Right.
But for my mom, every day, she made us feel like as if we were growing up, one of the richest kids in the world, because she taught us that we can do whatever we want. But for me, I told her one day, guys, that I really wanted to play in the NFL because it's the ultimate team sport. And she told me that, God gave everybody a talent. And my talent was that nothing negative bothers me. So if kids bullied me from first grade to 12th grade, or if I wasn't the fastest, wasn't the biggest, it didn't matter, because you got to stay focused on doing something that'll be unprecedented. And for all parents who are raising a kid who's special needs, my son, LeRoy Butler IV, he's on the spectrum of autism, and he may never do the Lambeau Leap, but he's such a great kid.
Right.
Every day he wakes up, tells me he loves me, we have fun. So it made me a better parent. I have 6 daughters and my one son. So she made me a better person. And the one thing, real quick, she taught me, Dan, she taught me how to be a good guy.
Right.
Just be a great, approachable person, network. And that's what I take everything from her.
She did a wonderful job, and God bless her. I mean, yeah, 100%.
So your story is that what led to your foundation that I saw, the anti-bullying campaign that your foundation is doing?
Yeah, we started back in Jacksonville with football, the LeRoy Butler Foundation. We did football, Tony Cohen, and then you know him. He ran my football program. And then at the time, I had 3 daughters. I said, I don't want to wait till one of my daughters get breast cancer to start to help. And then towards my pro career, I said, you know what? I really got to tell my story. So I wrote a book, LeRoy Butler Story, From Wheelchair to the Lambeau Leap. And I talked about in there how kids were bullying me because I was poverty and because I was disabled and special needs. So we started Butler versus Bullying, and that turned into something with social media. We do something now called Make It Obsolete by Delete. If you get a text, group text, or Facebook or Twitter, and if it's not true, just delete it. Don't even give it any oxygen. And I know everybody sometimes can't do that. But I just want kids to just say, you know what, I control my narrative, not what somebody else says. And I'm very proud of that.
You should be. LeRoy I was a young sportscaster in the late 80s when LeRoy, and he mentioned his good friend Edgar Bennett, and Edgar, and obviously we didn't have the Jaguars back then. We covered Florida and Florida State. Well, of course, I went to Florida, so it was hard for me to cover the Noles always winning with LeRoy. And they let me know about it and reminded me constantly, but it was nevertheless, it was a ton of fun. But those 2 guys are still 2 of my favorite Seminoles. It's hard for me to say this, LeRoy, of all time. But tell us about your experiences with one Robert Kleckler Bowden. And of course, when you talk about, you talk about famous plays, you're part of one of the most, if not the most famous play in college football history.
I'll tell you what, I remember Coach Bowden coming down to me and say, you know what, we have a kind of a trick play and we want to do it against Florida.
Thank God you didn't do that.
I know, right? And we always play Florida at the end of the year, Denny. So I'm like, okay, so we worked on it in practice. It never worked. And so we did it again. It didn't work. So now we play Clemson. Clemson was one of the top 5 teams in the nation, and they were everything. I mean, they had a great defense. I mean, Denny Ford is a historical coach. So we're down there, and we're behind by a few points, and we're on our own 20-yard line. And it was raining, by the way. And Burt Reynolds, good friend Burt Reynolds, he bought us new uniforms that week, and they were all white. And Dion was excited. I was excited. And we were like, we got these new uniforms. They're all white. And
you heard what he just said, right, Denny? Dion and LeRoy Butler. That tells you the kind
He also
of talent.
name dropped Burt Reynolds.
And
Like
Burt
this whole
Reynolds.
story
Yeah.
is, yeah.
He just glossed over it, but just so you know. I mean, that's the kind of guys who were playing at FSU back then. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to mention how you just kind of, Dion and Burt bought us unis. And
Man, that's why you the man. No, really, I was shocked because he bought us these new uniforms. We love Burt Reynolds, bless him.
Mm-hmm.
And we had him on, and we go there and play the game. And I was always on the punt team already, so nothing looked out of the ordinary. So as I'm running on the field, and Chip Ferguson was the quarterback, and he threw a pass, and the guy dropped it. So had the guy caught that, this play would never happen. So on fourth down, I run in. He says, "Run the play." I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes, run it." So I go out there. I'm thinking, okay, it's raining. What if I fall? What if I fumble? So I told Dane Williams, "Hey, we're going to run it." So our punter, he jumped as if the ball went over his head.
Mm-hmm.
You heard Death Valley, okay, in Clemson. It was loud because they thought it went over his head. Next thing you know, they see me sitting there, and I take off running. As I'm running, I see Donald Hooper. He's all the way back there. He's a punt return guy. So I said, "Just get the first down." Okay, great. I got the first down. I'm running. And I was, Dan, you know this. I was never really fast. The first I got, my head was going all the way back.
It was
You
classic.
couldn't even see my name. Okay, it was just all over the place. It was all over the place. And then he knocked me out like the three, and Ricky Andrews, who's my hero, the kicker, left-footed kicker. He's on the wrong hash for a left-footed kicker. He made it, and we won. I'll never get this. Dino, at the time, he was with ESPN. He said that was the best play since my and it blew up. Everybody knew who I was at that time.
yeah. The best play since My Fair Lady is what he said. We're having, he's breaking up a little bit, but we'll get him back in. Yeah, that was, and forever, though, you were teased, even though it's such a great play, about two things. One, getting caught, and your running style.
Yes. And I'm not a track star.
No, but you were fast now. Come on.
Yeah. But it was because it fooled everyone. And then it was supposed to be saved for Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for that particular game, but as Coach Bowden would say, he wanted somebody to win that game, and it was going to be us.
The best part of that story to me is that it never worked in practice.
Yeah, how about that?
Like, I mean, just running out there in that situation, it's like, it's never worked in practice.
We're going to go for it.
What the hell? Let's do it.
And most of those plays don't work because the defense kind of knows it's coming. But for most guys, they don't really know what's going on. They're like, well, what's going on here? And next thing you know, we're running this play. And, it just turned out to be such a classic play.
So let's go from one classic play to another before we get to Hall of Fame talk or whatever else we want to do. December 1993 against the Raiders. Now, I went back and watched this today, and I had to watch it, LeRoy, about 5 times to even process if the Lambeau Leap should have been invented that day. It was one of the wildest plays. Like, when you go back and you watch it, Dan, it was a screen pass to Ricky Jordan, I believe.
Okay.
Was tackled. Some would say he was down. Reggie White ends up with the ball, laterals it to LeRoy Butler.
Uh-huh.
Reggie White also may have stepped out of bounds, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Laterals it to LeRoy Butler, who then runs into the end zone.
Yes.
Does the Lambeau Leap for the first time.
Right.
And then here's the part I think gets kind of overshadowed. The dance after the Lambeau Leap.
Tremendous.
Pure excellence. It was Ray Lewis well before Ray Lewis.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Am I spot on this?
Oh, yeah, you're right on point with that. Now, I was just so excited. That was my first ever touchdown. And God is good. I'm going to tell you, because, Denny, you're right. That was before replay.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't figure out if he fumbled. They couldn't figure out if Reggie stepped down. And if you look at that play again, you'll see Tony Bennett, not the singer now,
right,
linebacker from Ole Miss. him and Bryce Pop, they're running towards Reggie, but they fall because it's 17 below zero and the field is frozen. But those guys fall. I don't fall as I'm running towards Reggie. So it was meant for me, and I get the ball, and I'm running down, and I just remember pointing to this guy like, well, I'm going to jump. And I think it caught him by surprise. And when it happened, it was something that I never thought would be a big deal. Mm-hmm. But Robert Brooks, receiver from South Carolina, mm-hmm. he did a big song about it like a year later, and then it blew up. It was the Lambeau Leap, and then, you know, even if like players that don't do it, I mean, sometimes the fans will boo you. Last year in the pandemic, one of the players was like, what's the one thing you'll miss about the 2020 season? The guy said, well, not doing the Lambeau Leap.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't do it. So it was something that I'll never forget, of course, because the fans, that's all we talk about. When I'm up north, Lambeau Leap. When I'm down south, Puntrooskie.
Yeah. Well, those are two pretty good things to be associated with.
Well, there's two good lessons to learn from this, too. Uh-huh. Is being sporadic pays off, right? So that wasn't pre-planned, right? Yeah. That was something you just decided to do. Not at all. And you always got to capitalize on what you do well, right? So I found this product today called Leap Premium Vodka.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, that is owned by one LeRoy Butler.
Is it now?
Yes, based off the Lambeau Leap.
How we doing with that? We doing okay with that?
Oh, we're doing phenomenal with it. And I think in another couple of months, you'll be able to get it in Jacksonville, all 50 states. Chad Greenway, the actual former Viking.
Yeah.
Last year in the pandemic, he said, man, listen, the alcohol business is booming. Yeah. You want to do your own vodka? I was like, well, sure. And the reason why it's a big deal, I'm going to tell you why it's a big deal, because all my fans know that I don't drink. I don't drink. I don't smoke. But everybody knows about the Leap, and if I say I can own it, you know, being an African-American, ownership is big for me.
Right.
And for my story. So I was just taken back that it's just one brand. I won't say it, but it's number one in all 50 states. But now it's only number one in 49 states. So we're number one in the state of Wisconsin. Well,
listen, the story is not finished yet. There's still a couple more chapters to be written for you. And I want to talk a little bit about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, one of the things we talk about down here when it comes to you, and obviously, remember when you said Aaron Jones and you're biased? Well, we're certainly biased when we talk about you, and you, what we want is for you to be in Canton, and you're on an upward trajectory, so that's good. You're headed that way. But it's called the Football Hall of Fame, okay? Well, there's nothing more famous than the Lambeau Leap and Puntrooskie. Yeah. So before I even get into the stats, we have that, right? That makes LeRoy pretty famous. Yep. Then you want to talk about his play on the field. I think he was like the first in NFL history with 20 sacks and 20 picks, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. First ever to get there. Yep. Safety is a redheaded stepchild, if you will, in terms of getting into the Hall. I think there are less than 10, but lately some safeties have gone in, including another Jacksonville product, Brian Dawkins. But you were the trendsetter. With all due respect to the other guys, and you don't have to say this, but I will. You were better than Atwater and Lynch, and your all-decade team. You were a great player. You were Ed Reed before Ed Reed. So anyway, again, maybe I'm biased, but I feel passionate about it. But I feel like your time is coming. How do you feel about it, LeRoy?
Well, I feel really good. The last two times I was an NFL Hall of Fame finalist.
Right.
And that phone call, it can be good or bad.
Yeah.
When Mr. Baker calls you up. The first time he called me up, he said, unfortunately, and I knew, hey, listen, it's fine. I'll see you next year. Mm-hmm. This year, when I got that phone call, it was different because if you make that final 10, that means you're just a year or two away. Mm-hmm. When I was told that I made the final cut to the final 10, I felt real good about possibly being in next year or the year after. And then I thought about it. I said, we're in a pandemic anyway. I would love to celebrate. So, maybe next year or the year after would be great because I get a chance to celebrate it. But I would also be happy for a guy like Tony Baselli because that's my brother. I love him.
Yep.
I love him and his wife. So if me and Tony Baselli going in at the same time, guys, I would be thrilled, just totally thrilled. But I remember Gene Fournette, good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He had just a great quote when me and him was talking.
Mm-hmm.
If you know you're going in, you're kind of at ease.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of players probably won't get that opportunity. But I just don't know what they go by anymore. We talked about stats and things of that nature. So I guess I have to just wait my turn.
By the way, LeRoy, just for the record, you weren't supposed to tell the media that you didn't get in when you let the cat out of the bag with Gene.
Hey, I've been knowing Gene for 50 years.
I know you have.
Hey, that's my friend.
Oh,
I've been
too
knowing
funny.
Frisco before. I've been knowing you for 45
I know. Oh, that's great.
I'm always curious about this.
My friends.
I'm always curious about this Hall of Fame stuff, though, Dan, because how much do you think about the Hall of Fame while you're playing?
Yeah.
Or is that a post-career? Oh, you know what? I didn't even know I wanted this.
Yeah.
Now I want it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, that's a great question because I remember Lee Rimmel from the Packers, our media guy. He sat next to me when I made All Decade.
Mm-hmm.
And he sat out next to me and he said, "You know what? You're first team All Decade." Okay. I said, "Okay, great." He said, No. Because I was going to get up and go do my thing in the locker room. He said, No. This means you have a chance at our Hall of Fame and you get in one day. And when he said that to me, it was impactful. It really was. Because I've never thought about, all decade teams. I just thought about all pros or Pro Bowls. I didn't think all decade. Matter of fact, I'll be full disclosure. I didn't know they did an all decade team until I said, oh, okay, these are the writers who choose, for the Hall of Fame one day. So it did mean something to me when we were talking about the top 33 guys in Florida. But making first team, now that you bring that up, it's something else is like a trigger for me. If you look at the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I think even 2000, I'm the only guy that made first team all decade that's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Is Palomalu in?
That's crazy.
He's not, right?
Yes.
Palomalu?
Yeah.
He went in last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Never mind.
His time will come, though. I am very confident that LeRoy will be a Pro Football Hall of Famer one day. Let's start to wrap it up with this. You do radio up there in the Wisconsin area. So how sick of you are you of talking about Aaron Rodgers? That's got to be the only topic. I mean, they probably don't even mention the Bucks and getting ready to make a run for the championship or whatever the Brewers are doing. It's probably go ahead, caller. Yeah, what about Aaron? Go ahead, caller. Yeah, I'm mad at Aaron. Go ahead, caller. Yeah, I hate Gutenkoost. What is the what are we talking about up there with Aaron Rodgers?
Well, you just did the show. I mean, we have the number one show, and we just wanted to just give the callers a platform to see what they thought about it.
Uh-huh.
Aaron not speaking for a while. I think he may speak on Monday, but it was all over the place because of what happened with Brett Favre. When Brett Favre retired, he didn't want to come back, and so the fans are like, we don't want to go through that again.
Okay.
So I would say 70% of the fan base are like, listen, just trade him and get all you can. And the 30% are like, wait a minute. The only way we're going to go to the Super Bowl is we keep him.
Right.
So I think for the most part, it'll get cleared up soon.
Listen, tell Green Bay fans this. Down here in Jacksonville, you don't get much sympathy when you talk about Brett Favre retiring and Aaron Rodgers moving in.
That's a great point.
That's true.
That's a great point.
Tell them that.
Nobody cares about their feelings on this one, but it is kind of a unique.
It's the biggest.
Go ahead.
I got a nephew that he went through all the games, but he's the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan. I mean, ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he's just like, y'all had two quarterbacks my whole life. We had the to be terrible, because he's a Jaguar fan as well. Would it be terrible just to get a franchise quarterback? So there's no sympathy for you guys going through this with these last two quarterbacks. I say, I understand.
What are your thoughts on it, though? What are your thoughts on just not specific, will he be there or not be there, but just the fact that this conversation's even being had with a guy the caliber of an Aaron Rodgers?
I hope that he understands about legacy. Legacy is something that you can control, and it's how do you, towards the end of your career, what people think about you and what you think about yourself, and you just don't want to go down as a quarterback who, for some reason, split Packer Nation like Favre did. You had people choose. Do they choose me or do they choose the franchise? And I'll try to tell players, and I understand what Aaron is saying, because I wanted to do a lot for the Packers. I mean, I retired. I live here. I'm thinking I was going to work for them. Never happened. But it was never about me. It's about that G. As long as that's G, I mean, it'll never change. It'll never change. They change players all the time.
Right.
And most people are not going to feel sympathy for you when you're making $40, $50 million a year. They're just not. So I think that's the one reason why. But the Packers have done everything. Allegedly, they offered him a contract. Allegedly, they said they should have called him about the Jordan Love pick, things of that nature. So I think it's closer than people think, and he will be the quarterback this year coming up.
How much did Brett Favre tarnish his legacy in Green Bay? Now that we're, a decade removed, more than that, removed from it, how much did that really tarnish his image or legacy with Green Bay?
I think it did a lot, because whenever you have to make the fans choose between you or the organization, that's when it gets a little rough. And we saw Denny when he went to Minnesota. People know you go to different teams, but now people wearing purple Ford jerseys and Jets jerseys, but the difference was Brett retired, and then he would come back, and people were just sick and tired of that. And then next thing you know, they're going through this with Aaron. And when he said allegedly that he didn't want to play there anymore, the fans are like, wait a minute. Out of every franchise, we're owned by the fans. That stadium is going to be sold out. It's 150,000 people on the waiting list. So, we deserve better. And that's why fans are thinking, if we're going to go through this again, then let's just trade him and get all the assets you can. But when you look back on it, when Brett was able to go into the big Hall of Fame and the Packer Hall of Fame, for the most part, it got all cleaned up. But it was just a bad ending to a guy that, that the Packers pretty much, put everything into their quarterbacks. And when they have control, sometimes, it just looks a little selfish, especially to your teammates. And you got to think about your teammates as well as yourself.
Well, let's wrap it up with LeRoy. Two of my favorite memories off the field, LeRoy, by the way, during your career back here in Jacksonville, you guys were part of you remember a celebrity basketball game we played over at FCCJ? There was one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, remember that? And then the other one was we roasted you one time for your, I think it was a fundraiser for your foundation, but so I was one of the roasters, but we had all these guys up there. But I always remember this, and I don't know how you felt about him, but I was so impressed with I believe it was your then head coach Sherman, because I think he flew like all night from like California to come to Jacksonville just to do that for you. And I was always so impressed with him for doing that. However you felt of him, I thought that was a great move. But the roast was a lot of fun. I remember that specifically.
Yeah, Mike Sherman. He's one of my favorite coaches. I love him. Yeah, I love that kind of loyalty. That's why I love the loyalty with Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow. Mm-hmm. I think everybody should be loyal like that. If you have a chance to help out a friend or do something for one another, that's the one thing COVID has taught us. Don't wait. Just do it. Yeah. And the loyalty is everything. So I just appreciate what he did. Thank you for bringing that up, Dan. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we appreciate you. And you're really one of the great, honest to God, one of the great success stories ever from Jacksonville. And if people don't know your story, we're glad to tell it a little bit here today, because it should be told. To come from what you were able to come from, to rise through the love and of your mom and your family, and to get to Florida State and go through that, and then down to the NFL, and what will ultimately culminate with a trip to Canton. We're just so proud of you, and we'll always think for you of Jacksonville as being home.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I had a blast, and maybe when I get into the Hall of Fame, we'll do it again.
Absolutely. Many blessings,
that.
LeRoy. And thank you for joining us on the Hometown Heroes podcast, brought to you by Lockett Law, knowbeforeyouBlow.com. Thanks, LeRoy.
Thank you, guys. Take care.